Scammers trying to target freelancers is nothing new, but they're starting to get really, really good. Let's check this one out. Scammers have been targeting freelancers in all sorts of ways, be it film festivals, products and services like image editing, touch-up, app building, websites, you name it. Scammers go after freelancers all the time. I've seen dozens and dozens of emails, and they're all pretty obviously scams, and almost all of them just go directly to the garbage and don't even get read. However, I got an email last week for a potential project that ended up being a scam that was sinister in how convincing it is. It was a legit project. They had a location. Everything was flushed out in a way where there were some red flags. But if you don't have a sensitive BS meter, or maybe you're early on in your freelancing journey, you may have fallen for this. So we're going to dive into this email, look through the whole process, and kind of point out some of those red flags, and then just talk about the final massive big red flag that should be an immediate no-no for anyone. Let's dive in. Now, this whole interaction started with a submission to one of the contact forms on my website. Now, probably half of those submissions to my website contact forms just end up being deleted immediately. And half of them are legitimate. So it's something that I do have to pay attention to. And this was one of those ones that was like 50-50. It could be a scam, it could be real. And since they weren't asking me to click on any links or anything, I decided to follow up with it. So here's an image of the contact form. You can see the grammar is maybe a little funky, like good day to you. Most people don't greet someone with good day to you. My name is Chris. We're just going to leave it at Chris. I'd like to know if you do aerial photography services. Pretty benign request. And for me, one of the things that convinced me to actually follow up on this is that they refer to it as aerial photography services. Most of the time, I've had a couple people submit to my contact form just saying like, do you do drone? And those I'm like, I'm not going to respond to that. If someone's asking specifically for aerial photography services, that's something that I'm like, okay, they kind of understand maybe a little bit more of the lingo. So I ended up following up with this guy via email saying, yes, we do perform aerial photography and video services. What needs do you have? And the email that came in next was definitely not what I expected. Great, thank you. I need an initial aerial shoot of a site at all 4 cardinal directions at 200, 350, or 400 feet. And then there would be a separate 6 to 8 minute video shot over 3 days with daily site visits, including photos, drone, ground video, edited with cool music. This is incredibly convincing. So there are a few things that made me think this is legit. First of all, his altitude stopped at 400 feet, and that is the highest you can fly a drone without getting special permission from the local FAA governing body. So to me, the fact that they know that, or maybe guess that, that's a pretty good indicator that this person has maybe used aerial photography services in the past. An initial shoot at each of the 4 cardinal directions, using language like cardinal directions, like this is a pretty convincing quick outline of a project. 6 to 8 minute video over 3 days, daily site visits, including photos, drone video, and ground video edited with cool music. This is a pretty typical project that you'd be looking at if someone like a project manager or a job boss wasn't able to actually be on site for the start of a project, or they wanted to maintain visibility to the project where they're managing other projects elsewhere. This is a pretty typical ask. And so initially I was really convinced with this project. One small red flag that I noticed here is a 6 to 8 minute video. The 6 to 8 minute video is pretty long. I very rarely do videos for clients that push past 5 minutes. So somebody specifically asking for a 6 to 8 minute video felt a little off. So at this point, I'm pretty convinced that this is a real person asking for some real legitimate work. So one of the things I always do with people like this is I just Google their name. I type in their name in the city that I live in and try and find them. And it just so happened that with this gentleman, the name exactly matched a project manager for a very large local excavation company. And I actually know one of the guys who does aerial services for this excavation company. So I was really convinced, at least just with this first email with this guy, that this could actually be a legitimate job. Okay, so I've already mentioned one of the red flags. I'm going to mention one more really quick, and that's that this whole interaction started with just a generic Gmail email. Normally that's a slight red flag for me if somebody's emailing me for a job this large. However, they did email me on a Sunday, so I figured, maybe they're at home, they're a workaholic, they work on the weekends, and they just ended up submitting the form. Google auto-completed it with their personal email. That's happened to me before where someone has been like, oh, hey, sorry, switch to my work email. So I wasn't too thrown off by that, but it was something I was a little bit concerned about. Let's keep going. We'll get to some more red flags here in just a second. So I responded with asking for some information about the site that would determine if I could fly at various altitudes. Salem is in like a Class D airspace, so we have some spots around the city where your altitude is restricted pretty low, or you have to get special permission. And then asked if he had time for a Zoom call or a phone call this week, because for me, I always like to meet in person or get somebody on the phone to confirm, hey, you're probably a real person, and we can actually have a conversation about this instead of just going back and forth via email. However, he was really responsive with emails, generally responding within 30 to 45 minutes, which for some people would also be a red flag. So his response was this, a little bit longer here, talking about surveyors working on the property survey during this time, pictures and video, all this progression stuff. He's in the hospital recouping from a throat surgery and preparing for a second surgery in a few days before I can get discharged. I prefer the video format MP4 or QuickTime, all raw content, shots, whatever. Okay, budget $6,500. So it's fairly rare that a client, before meeting with me or speaking to me or like really seeing any of my work, because I don't have any of my aerial photography work on my site, would give me a budget, especially a budget like this that's, I mean, for some people, you're going to be like, it's small. For some people, you're going to be like, holy crap, you can charge $6,500 for drone work. And for what this project is, $6,500, or what this project would have been if it wasn't fake, $6,500 is well within a reasonable budget for a project like this. Somebody saying that they're in the hospital recuperating from a throat surgery, I've had that happen. I've had clients email me, say like, hey, my wife's on maternity leave and I'm going to be out for a few, or something like that, and they can't talk. But it's definitely a medium-sized red flag where someone's like, hey, I can't speak on the phone. Granted, in these emails especially, the grammar is fairly good. It's fairly convincing that it's obviously not somebody from overseas. There's not massive grammatical errors where you're kind of tripping over sentences. So a little fishy, but he's talking about surveyors and all this stuff where like it feels like he has some in-depth knowledge. Where things start to get a little weird is when clients prefer video format and MP4 or QuickTime. These are things where like when clients start to talk about these things, I start to get a little bit worried, because I've only had a couple of clients be very specific about what formats they can use because they were using it in certain instances. For the most part, clients don't care and they don't even really think about it. So asking for MP4 or QuickTime, all raw content shoots should be delivered via Dropbox or Google Drive. I mean, that's fairly normal, whatever. And then asking where I'm in a second email right after that, same time, asking where I'm located, which is on my website, but whatever, it's innocent. By now, I'm a little bit skeptical by now, just because some of the questions are a little bit weird. Some of the questions are a little bit weird, and the whole conversation is just feeling a little bit off. But we're still gonna keep going. We're still gonna try and figure out what's happening. All right, so the format requirements are just fine. I typically do deliver via Google Drive, yada yada yada. Okay, asking now. Here is a big question for me. I know what company he might work for. The name matches perfectly. The job matches perfectly. So I'm assuming he works for this company. So I just ask, what company do you work for? Because we're still working off Gmail here. So within a half an hour, he responded with some more details, repeated a few things, kind of expanded on what the project's going to look like, and then answered my question of where is the shoot located, which I had asked a few emails earlier. And so he sends me the address for the shoot. However, it's hyperlinked, which is a little bit suspicious. So one way that I can get around this is if you just right click, or if you're on a Mac, double click, copy the link address and then like paste it in a Word document or whatever, so you can verify that it's an actual link. And turns out this ended up being just a link to Zillow to show me the property that he wants drone video and drone photos of. So again, it's like half convincing, half like a little unconventional from projects I've worked with. Granted, you guys have all seen the memes where it's like $500 client and they send this whole list of requests and complaints and all this stuff. $5,000 client and they're just like, money sent, thank you. That's kind of the vibes I'm maybe getting here, is like maybe this like $6,500, like this is a huge project. The dude's probably spending, or the company's probably spending a couple $1 million on this excavating project. $6,500 is just a drop in the bucket. why be so formal? So this plot of land actually does exist and actually is in a new development. So again, like, if it's a scam, it's really good, or it's just a legit project with kind of some maybe funky red flags. So I sent an email back with some bullet points, just making sure I understand everything correctly. He hits me back, says everything looks good. I told him I'm happy to take on the project and kind of set things in motion in order to like send a proposal, send a contract, send an invoice. For projects like this, I asked for 50% of the total project estimated cost up front, with the final 50% to be paid upon delivery of the final deliverables. So at this point, I'm definitely not 100% sold that this is a legitimate project. There's too many little red flags. There's too many things that are off. But I'm still kind of like pushing through this. I ended up scoping out the address that he sent me. It's a legit site that has a bunch of development happening. So could very well be a legit project. So we get to this point in our correspondence where I'm ready to send over the proposal. Haven't sent the proposal, haven't even written the proposal yet. And he says he's ready to pay the $3,000, which to me is a little strange that somebody, even at a company this big, for a budget that is fairly small compared to other things they do, they're willing to just pay $3,000 without a contract. And for me, I really don't want to accept $3,000 without a contract. I say that I'm set up to use Venmo or Square, happy to invoice you on either platform or pick up a paper check. So I use Square. This isn't an advertisement for Square. I like Square. It's free. It's easy. Honestly, I don't do very much business over Square. I maybe send 2 or 3 invoices a year over Square. Almost everything I do is paper check. So this was where the major red flag came in, and I knew definitely done out of this project. I'm so sorry. I don't feel comfortable using merchants like Square or Venmo. I've had issues with them in the past for double charging and late remittance charges. As much as I've used Square, which is granted, I only use them a few times a year, but I've been using them for the past 5 or 6 years, and I know places that use them all the time have never had any issues with Square or Venmo. I'd be glad if you set up a card merchant like Clover or Elevon, bake merchant with them so we can proceed. So this whole paragraph is super sketchy. Wants me to set up specifically with a merchant of their choice and is willing to pay for any charges incurred. Very strange. So as long as I've been doing freelance work and requesting money from people for the services that I give to them, no one has ever asked me what merchant I use. I've had one person ask me because they really like the platform and they wanted to use it themselves, but no one has ever asked me what merchant do you use, because it doesn't matter. You're just paying me money. They all charge the same 3.3 or 3.5% plus 30 cents or whatever per transaction, which doesn't matter to them because I take care of that on my end. So for somebody to ask me what merchant I use is super sketchy. And then to ask me to use a separate merchant, very bizarre. Again, this isn't an advertisement for Square. Square is free. Square doesn't charge you anything other than the fees to do transactions, but just to ambiently have Square doesn't cost you any money. Clover does. Clover, there's a monthly charge. There's a $149 setup charge. So all of this stuff that I'm hedging my bets. But how is this a scam? So at this point, I've determined this is a scam. This is super weird. I start Googling some things. I find an entire I think it was a DJing subreddit that talks about this bizarre Clover scam. How exactly this works, I have no idea, but it's some type of refund scam. I did call Clover and tried to talk to their fraud department and couldn't really get any information out of them. But Clover, CloverGo, and Elevon have this weird refund policy that people could use to scam. And a lot of times what people will do, a scammer will do, is say like, hey, I want a refund for these services, and then scam people into writing them a refund check and then also getting money back from the bank. So you would write them a $3,000 check to give them their money back, but then they would also get $3,000 out from the bank. So now you're out $6,000. That's not great. So overall, it's just a very strange interaction that is really well thought out. The project itself is really well thought out. Knowing what altitudes to fly at, talking about cardinal directions, surveyors, the project is just, it's a legit project that someone could reach out to you and ask you to do to monitor the work that's being done on a job site. That's a super normal project. Budget, super normal. The fact that this person's name matches a project manager for a very large excavating company that I know utilizes aerial photography and video. Overall, it's just a very well thought out scam. All right, so the final piece that kind of solidified this as a scam is I knew the listing agent for this property. So I gave them a call and asked them if they knew of any potential development happening on this parcel of land. And they said, Absolutely not. So that was kind of the final, like, I was already convinced this was a scam. That was the final nail in the coffin. It's definitely a scam. But this is crazy how convincing they were able to make this, down to finding a location in a development that could potentially be developed. It's a very, very good scam. So since I told them that I emailed the listing agent, they haven't reached back out to me. So I'm going to assume that they caught on. There is a subreddit, I believe it's a DJing subreddit, that has a bunch of people talking about this very same thing, like personal trainers being asked for, like, someone is willing to pay for a year of personal training up front, but you have to use Clover. Very obviously a scam, and maybe if you're new to freelancing or don't have a BS meter, this is something that you could easily fall for. Maybe even if you already use Clover, it'd be even easier to fall for. So, bottom line, be careful. The scammers are out there. They want to get you. They want to get your money. And scammers suck. So be careful. Be on your guard. Don't fall for stuff. And stick to your guns. You know what you're doing, especially if you've been in this for long enough. If something seems fishy, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. So stay safe. Have fun. See you next time.